He said not necessarily.
Good afternoon, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy Boxing Day to you all. Welcome to Carrow Road. Charlton Athletic, the visitors here this afternoon. Let's jump straight into the team news. The headline is no Josh Sargent for the Canaries. We'll come back to that in just a moment. They line up with Kovacevic in goal, Fisher, McConville, Darling and Crisene as the back four. We're expecting it to be Maatsen and McLean as the midfield two, with Schwartout and Jurasek on either flank. Anis Ben Slimane, his first championship start and appearances of the season behind Jovan Makama up front. The subs bench, Grimshaw, Stacey, Cordoba, Mahovo, Gibbs, Wright, Springett, Marcondes and Clisgoran for the Canaries. So just to run through that again, Kovacevic in goal, Fisher, McConville, Darling and Crisene, the back four, Maatsen and McLean, the midfield two. We're expecting Jurasek and Schwartau to play on either flank with Slimane behind Jovan Makama, and that's subs bench for you again. Grimshaw, Stacey, Cordoba, Mahovo, Gibbs, Wright, Springett, Marcondes, and Clisgoran. Let's get straight into Josh Sargent's absence then, Paddy. He's been serving this concussion, isn't in a position to quite start games of championship football, which is is a blow for Norwich City, but I guess they've got Jovan Makama, who scored 3 in 2 games for them.
Yeah, but it's not ideal. It's more not ideal for me from the just checking out Arnell in that Charlton lineup as well, or squad. It's not ideal from a point of view if he's still, I mean, as we're led to believe, he's through the concussion protocol side of it, but he's still clearly reporting to Norwich's medical staff that he's not right for consideration to be selected. So that element alone is a concern now. I mean, I meant to check before we went on air. I don't know how many weeks ago that Sheffield United game was. It's 2, maybe 3 weeks getting on for now. So, purely on that element is concerned. Yes, offset by the way Makama has took to the role, but he's a young man and he's inconsistent. And I thought there was inconsistency in his Preston performance, albeit he got the goal. But it's heaping more responsibility on him in his absence. And so, first and foremost, it's the lad and how he's feeling, but he's obviously not feeling to the point where he can even be considered for a matchday squad. So that, something we'll have to dig into with Climont after the game. How concerning is that? What is the timeline from here? Is it literally from day to day now until Josh Sargent tells them he's available? They have to do without him.
I think it probably is that now, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's not ideal, is it, by any way, shape or form? So it's an unwanted complication. Yes, Chris Gordon again is on the bench, but you have your still lingering concerns given the story around him and that Sheffield United game pre-Christmas about his knee issues and the limited amount of minutes he's had subsequently. That feels like they're managing that as well on a more measured, cautious side of the spectrum. And now, likewise, they're doing it with Sargent. So it's not ideal. I'm sure I've not had a look at any of our comments. It's probably fueling a few transfer conspiracy theories.
Yeah, we've got a couple here on YouTube. Concussion, new transfer story, cover story instead of he's got an off in training. And Troy says it goes to show that Sargent is being sold in January. I think those two are you've gone very early on that front.
It is inevitable because we've had from Climont now at these press conferences he's training for 2 or 3 games now. And yet for me, it's not. He can't even make the squad. Even if there was a cautious element of Makama showing he can handle the load and the burden and spearheading the attack, we'll bring him and ease him onto the bench. No, not even that today. So he's obviously a step below that in terms of his availability chances. That is a concern. We will obviously ask the question and we'll see what Climont has to say. But again, I don't think he's been kept out of the equation because he's off to another. I don't think at this stage of the festive period that would be a likely scenario.
That would be ridiculous.
And it flies in the face of how Sargent handled himself around the Wolfsburg stuff in the summer, where he could have easily, in those touring weeks, made it clear he didn't feel he was in the right frame of mind. We've seen it many times with players here. We see it around the game generally. that isn't anything you would expect from him. So I don't think that he would be driving anything, or his camp would be driving anything of a transfer nature around his absence. It is simply fitness related. And as I say, it is a concern because he's not available today, and feasibly we can't tell when he will be available. So, but as Clement has said all the time, as a club, you have to follow the rules, particularly when it's head injuries. You can't take any chances. We've seen it with Stacey this season. So it's understandable, with an injury of that nature, if he is still reporting he doesn't feel well in himself enough to be considered for selection, you take no chances.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of cover off the transfer stuff, I would push back on that a little bit and say, in Norwich City's position, why on earth would you entertain kind of leaving a player out at this stage? They're 23rd in the Championship. They're 3 points adrift. They need Josh Sargent. They need him to play football matches. And equally, I think we've seen from Josh Sargent over the summer, he is not a player that is, you'd like to think, and we've certainly got no indication that this is the case, that he's going to be one that begins to try and force a move out of the building. At this stage, that definitely doesn't seem the case, and you can only go on history. And historically, in the summer, he didn't do that. He carried himself very well. He cares deeply about the relationship that he has with fans. So that is what I would push back on any conspiracy theories on that front. And who knows? There are lots of games in this period. It may be that they've decided not to take the risk for this one, but with Monday, obviously New Year's Day, and next Sunday with Stoke as well, 4 games in 10 days. Maybe if he has to feature for 3 out of 4, then I think that's probably okay. So yeah, that's the headline. No Josh Sargent, still having no Jakov Medic in the squad as well. So that's another one we will ask about post game. But let's speak about the 2 guys who are in, Paddy. And as so often we have said and framed the debate around Matej Jurasek, what an opportunity for him starting on that right-hand side, especially given what Tony Springett did away at Preston last weekend. I think he'd maybe feel a little bit unfortunate not to be starting today.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't personally be putting him into a starting equation for me, Springett. He was good. I thought the way he carried the ball, as we said on the podcast, is I'm not seeing that necessarily from him at first team level. It reminded me, and I said that on the podcast, more his academy period, where his first thought is to put the full back on the back foot, and we saw that at Preston probably for the first time for me in a Norwich shirt. But I still wouldn't have been elevating him into the equation for a start today. It is a surprise though. He's gone Jurasek and Slimane, and the biggest surprise is it's out you come Jacob Wright, because what has he done wrong in terms of the 10 role? For me, last game here, absolutely pivotal to that win over Southampton.
He did speak about managing the squad, didn't he?
Well, that's what he's done. That's clearly what he's doing. Yeah, and he's probably looked at it and lined up the opponents and wouldn't disrespect them publicly, but he looks at Charlton and maybe feels that's a game where they can have a solid base in terms of McLean and Matson, and then tinker a little bit more in the more creative positions at home against the team who started reasonably well this season, but they're going the opposite direction now. So I can see why he's done it for this game, but I still would have liked to see Jacob Wright in, because it looks to me he's spoken about this, Clement, about how he likes his intelligence and the way he carries himself in that position, and he really looks like he's comfortable in a 10. So why not give him another opportunity? I don't see he's a young player. I don't think there's a managing load with Jacob Wright for me. So I'd have played him today, and one of Slimane or Jurasek maybe is fair enough. But to go with both shows you the faith he has in this group of players. And also, quite rightly, he's looking at it. It's a quick turnaround for Watford, then again Stoke. So you can understand why he's trying to manage the squad. But feels an element of gamble for me bringing Jacob Wright out on the evidence of the 2 games he's had at number 10. Albeit, let's be honest, Preston, he didn't really cover himself in glory. He wasn't alone in that game because it was a very difficult opponent on a difficult pitch. So maybe he's looked at it and thought, well, we'll just dip him out a little bit, give him a breather, and then bring him back in maybe for Watford here on Monday.
Yes, indeed. And a really opportunity for Anis Ben Slimane, who was out of it at one stage. I think Liam Manning spoke towards the end of his era about how he was kind of impressing in training and beginning to put himself forward a little bit. Clearly, Philippe Clement has seen that continue when since he's come back from his quad injury. First start, and I think I'll get paid to check this in a moment, but I'm pretty sure it's his first championship minutes of the season. Played in the League Cup against Southampton, but not sure he's played in the league. One thing to keep an eye on, as it's been kind of suggested, maybe Pelle Matson can play a little bit further forward. So we'll have to wait and see how that midfield blend looks and how it translates to. Obviously, Charlton play 3 in there as well, so that's worth bearing in mind. But yeah, I mean, for him, Paddy, I mean, he was in a position where it was almost seemingly he was free to go in the summer if an opportunity arose, despite obviously Norwich City converting that deal this time last year to make that loan permanent. Again, we speak about Jurasek. another opportunity for Anis Ben Slimane to try and get himself in the team. And something we have seen under Philippe Clement is these individuals, when they have been given those opportunities, if they don't take them, as Jurasek didn't, then you can see the consequences. But by and large, those players that have been afforded opportunities have taken them.
They have, yeah. And that was probably the most impressive thing, in this period. That a group of players who you looked at them, and I mean, you'd be probably hard pushed to say even the strongest 11 were looking good enough, because they wasn't, and the league table tells you that. But the drop off from the principals, the key players, to the rest it felt under Liam Manning anyway, a bit of a chasm. Having said that, Clement has shuffled his pack, and players have come in, and players have looked. We just talked about him in the last segment. Jacob Wright has looked comfortable in a role I don't think too many of us saw him in. So that needs to continue today. And it goes back to that comment he came out with the other day about the transfer window, and they've had meetings at two weekly intervals, and they've obviously now, off the back of what some of these players are doing in certain positions, maybe right back, maybe the number 10 role, have decided to maybe just not pause completely, but maybe not prioritise an area of the squad rebuild in January that they may have done otherwise if it wasn't for the performance levels of some of these players. So, and the results and performances tell you that there has been an uptick from the entire squad, because he has shuffled, he has rotated. It hasn't been the same 11. Yeah, he's talked about there's certain areas of the squad, and it's obvious now, it's centre back, it's centre mid, where he doesn't really feel he can rotate. But around that, he's showing a willingness to do that. Some of that enforced with Sargent, of course, but no, it's positive. It's positive because this doesn't get driven upwards and away from the bottom three in the second part of the season without a squad, because the reality of it is, and it's been proven now with the Sargent scenario, you can't really rely on a core of 4 or 5 who are going to play week in, week out. That's completely unrealistic in this league. So, let's hope after today that while we're maybe expressing some reservations about Wright out and Slimane in and Jurasek in, that they step up. Certainly Jurasek, after his experiences here under Clement against Oxford, why wouldn't you really want to grasp the nettle today against another team maybe in that bracket, bottom end of the table, and really stamp your authority on it? Because we haven't seen that from him in a Norwich shirt. Now's the time.
Indeed, and this is a positive as well. I was going to raise this, but Elliot's beautifully segued into it. Good to see Liam Gibbs, and crucially more so Lucien Mahovo back on the bench. It's been a while since we saw him. Of course, he featured in that West Brom Ipswich double-headed in there, and then seemed to suffer again with another injury, which was very loosely described as not the same injury, but in a similar area. I think it's how Liam Manning described it, which was particularly helpful. But good to see him slowly being integrated now, and you just hope that management of his return is a lot more cautious and considered than perhaps it was last time around.
Well, we could have about another 14 pods on the fitness and management of players this season, last season. But the reality is, Clement comes in, and we've spoken to Ben Napper about this, and there's a lot of parallels with what he inherited at Monaco in terms of a squad who lots of players were not available, or there was issues in terms of keeping players fit, and he has that experience. I think that is his background. He's talked about that. He's not really wanted to project anything in public, but you get the sense he has given it a bit of a shake-up behind the scenes with the fitness, with the medical side. It's difficult because he's trying to do this mid-season. Clearly we all saw the bleep test challenge when he first went in. He's talked about some hard blocks of training weeks, and for me, I wasn't talked about too much, but I thought maybe some of the sluggishness at Preston was as much about, he said he'd had a really hard week, and you can imagine physically that would have been a tough week on the training field, a clear week leading into Preston, and maybe that just took an edge off the performance individually, collectively, because they did look creatively. You made the point that was probably as poor as they've been under Clement. They didn't really offer, they didn't have that dynamism to their play that they have had under him. So maybe that is the balance, that he's trying to get these players more robust, fitter, while doing it in the middle of a season, while doing it with a team who are bottom 3 and trying to pick up results pronto. So, but with Mahovo, yeah, absolutely, because there is no doubt, I think we've seen enough of him. There is a talent that needs to be managed far better in terms of fitness-wise, so that he can go out and perform and produce what he was doing in now a frustratingly small sample when he first came in under Torrell.
Indeed, right. Let's bring you the Charlton lineup. Then they line up with Kaminsky in goal, Goff, Jones, and Gillespie. We're expecting that to be a back 3. A midfield of Bree and Bell at right and left wing back. Coventry, Sonny Carey, Norwich fan, former Kings Lynn midfielder, in there, and starting with Anderson, completing that trio in midfield with Leeburn and Olifo up front. There's Mannion, Burke, Doherty, Ranyan, Costello, Berry, Apter, Nibbs, Campbell, and Kelman is how they line up, and they've stabilised their form somewhat after a 5-game losing streak. But for those of you who watch Terrace Talk will know that came against Coventry, Middlesbrough, and some of the better teams in the division. So maybe not a real true reflection of where this Charlton team is under Nathan Jones. And with him in charge, you know it's going to be aggressive, and you know they're going to be front-footed, and they're going to come at Norwich City, which makes for an interesting dynamic today. Paddy, in terms of this game and in general the festive period, it's really intense. It always is, but it feels more so this year. 4 games in 10 days. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to you as well. It feels very, very intense and also very pivotal for Norwich. Opportunity to get some momentum, crucially to get some points on top of that. And obviously with 3 of those 4 games coming at Carrow Road, what an opportunity this is for Philippe Clement and his side starting today.
And you just feel and it's probably unwarranted, but the frustration at Oxford, 2 points gone begging, Preston likewise 2 points, and they've just left 4 points out there. Add that to where they have already done, which is excellent under Clement in just a short period of time, and how much more optimistic maybe going into this period. But nevertheless, that's not to dismiss that in both those games and the other ones, really, Birmingham aside, they've been competitive and probably merited something from all those games. Watford away should never have got beaten that day, by their own fault, no doubt, in the main. But nevertheless, the performance level deserves something, as it has done in most of the other games. And so, with this run now, taking nothing for granted, but, today Charlton, Watford and Stoke, who have gone into a bit of a reverse gear, you've got to be looking for a real decent haul of points, and hopefully that will be enough, allied to maybe what some of the teams around them don't do over this period. That come January the 1st or, January the 2nd, they're looking behind them at 3 teams in the rearview mirror. And what a great start to 26 that would be. And it would just then, on the cusp of a January window where you hope they can get it right and make some astute additions to just build on what would be then some real go-forward momentum. You just fear if they come through this 3 and 4 spell at home and they haven't really stamped their authority on these teams, and it's asking more questions than answers, then it just feels again a bit of a holding pattern, and you're looking for them to maybe pick it up again, and it places even more onus on January and even more pressure that they try and get that right. So, today feels big, and it has to be a win for me. I don't think you walk off this pitch today, anything connected with Norwich, and they've drawn the game, you feel that's a good outcome. So it has to be a win, and I think it will be a win.
Yeah, me too. I think Norwich win this game, and I think it would. Yeah, like you say, it feels like a big 1-2 win here against the team who, apart the last 2 games, have struggled in recent months, newly up from League One. It feels like an opportunity to try and continue that momentum. So, I'm going to go for a 2-0 Norwich, I think, and
3-1,
that elusive clean sheet. 3-1?
3-1.
3-1, there you go. There you go, Pinken.com, the place to go across the afternoon. We'll obviously put those questions on Josh Sargent, on Jakov Medic, to Philippe Clement after the game. All of that will be at Pinken.com, as will all your usual analysis and reaction from this Boxing Day clash. And let's hope Norwich City can kickstart a very festive period with a victory. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll catch you again very, very, very